Welcome back, everybody, to Crunchbase's second installment of Ahead by Crunchbase. In our last session, we talked about how go-to-market teams can move from static territory planning to a more predictive focus, identifying where momentum is building and where deals are most likely to emerge. But once you know where to focus, the next challenge is how do you actually engage those accounts at the right moment? Now, because modern outbound isn't working through static lists and just hoping the timing is right, it's really about recognizing when something is changing inside a company and using that to guide how and when you can strategically engage that opportunity and that target account. And that's exactly what we're going to be digging into today. How to use real time predictive signals to make outbound more timely, more relevant, and ultimately more effective. Now, for today's episode on how to master signal led outbound, I am thrilled to be joined by our Director of Enablement, Nick Hill, and then the woman behind the mic. My name is Liz Beavers. I am a Senior Product Marketing Manager here at Crunchbase. And then later in our session, we're also going to be joined by our Head of Events, Sally Harmon, who's actually going to be walking us through how mastering these signals in your outbound motion can come to life using Crunchbase. So, Nick, I would love to go ahead and pass things to you to kick off our discussion today. What are you seeing when it comes to outbound, and where are teams getting stuck? Where is the opportunity that we can unlock?
Yeah, thanks, Liz. Hey, everyone. Nick Hill, Director of Enablement for Crunchbase. And I want to just kind of have an open conversation about this. So I'll talk a little bit about what I've seen in my career in enablement and then where I think the opportunity is. But in the chat, I would be curious to hear your opinions as well. So a lot of companies kind of go through three evolutions. The first one is they know their ICP, they know their ideal customer profile. And so they tend to just go after that with a giant blanket of outbound. I call this ICP led outbound. The only signal that you're using is your ideal customer profile. So if I'm an account executive and I join your team, you're going to say, hey, Nick, we tend to go after let's say early stage cybersecurity companies. So go after every cybersecurity company you can find. And then I'm going to go pull as many lists, as many, as much research as I can. And that's the signal that I'm using. As teams begin to mature, I start to see them use what I call internal signals. So internal signals are things like, well, who has bought our solution in the last 12 months? Let's go look at what size of company are they? How many employees do they have? What stage of funding are they in? How much revenue do they typically get? And the RevOps teams, the marketing teams, the sales leaders, they all tend to come together and say, okay, these are the internal signals that we know are valuable. This is also where you'll start to look at things like marketing signals. Who's actually clicking on our ads? Who's looking us up on Google or ChatGPT, right? And so all of these internal signals start to come together. The last one I normally see are these like kind of product-based signals. Who's actually using our product? Who are our power users? All of that is very valuable. What it does is it helps you to start to narrow down that giant list. Let's keep going with our example of cybersecurity companies. Now we tend to say things like, we're going after cybersecurity companies that are Series A and B, that have at least 50 million in funding, that have at least 100 employees. And I say, okay, now we have more signals that we can go after. The problem is finding that information out, right? And that can be really, really difficult if you're just going to company websites, if you're looking them up on LinkedIn. You're having to piece together a lot of manual information. So this is when teams typically evolve into pairing their internal signals with external private market data. And that's what you see here on the left. This is what Crunchbase has been exceptional at for nearly 20 years now. So if we look at Crunchbase, I can now take all of my internal signals and I can pair them with all of the private market data. Show me who just raised funding. Show me who has 50 million in revenue. Show me who has at least 100 employees. Show me who's developing products in this industry or coming soon micro industry. So we're starting to be able to pair that private market data. once you get to that point, you're in a pretty good spot. You're using a lot of power. We have a lot of customers that are using us for that today. The next step and that final level of maturity is when you start to layer in predictive signals and insight signals as well. So now I'm saying, I know who's buying my product, I know who's clicking my marketing, who's using me, who are my power users. I'm pairing that with private market data that I can rely on, and then I'm adding these predictive signals. Who's actually about to raise funding? Who is about to IPO or be acquired or grow? Who is developing products that my solution can help with? Who's in the news for things that I know I can attach to? And that's where signals start to get more granular and more powerful. So when I think about what you've got on the screen, the private market data on the left-hand side, that's really powerful, but you're only going to be getting to those companies at the same time as everybody else. You're reaching out to them when everyone knows they just got funding, when everyone knows they just went public. And so the challenge there is you're competing with every single peer in your space. When you start to layer in the predictive signals and the insight signals, that is when you can start to get ahead of that competition. You can start to drive outcomes where you are now having conversations before the rest of your peers are. So what I want you to take away from this is you've got your internal signals that we've talked about. You have your external kind of historical signals, the fundamentals that everybody knows, and especially those that are relying on someone like Crunchbase. And then you have these unique kind of predictive and insight signals that are going to take it to the next level. And when you pair those three together, that's what gives you first mover advantage. And that's what allows you to prioritize in a way where now your response rates are going up, your conversion rates are going up, and ultimately your closed won revenue. So those are some of the things I think about when I think about mastering signal-led outbound. But I'd be curious to hear from the group and try to understand kind of what you're using out there today. So Liz is going to launch a poll for us that you should see in front of you now. And I'm curious, I want you to select all that apply. So if you're currently going after those in your ICP, go ahead and select that. If you're using company insights, your news stories, your product and partnership announcements, patents, etc., click on that. If you're taking a look at recent funding, acquisition, IPO, or growth, let's click there. And then the final one, which I would expect to see a little less of, is those that are predicted to fundraise, be acquired, IPO, or grow. And Liz, it looks like we've got about half of our registrants have answered. And this is about what I would expect to see. Yeah. So let's take a look at the results of the poll. I'm not sure. Liz, can the participants see
Yeah,
this one?
I just shared out those results, and
Uh,
honestly, I'm not surprised based on what you were just saying in your earlier discussion, Nick. So many people are going based on ICP fit, but it's also helpful to see that a lot of folks are also leveraging company insights. So what's been happening as far as the news goes, or latest partnership or product launches. So a lot to deduct from there based on your previous discussion.
Yeah, and this is exactly what this is kind of follows my own evolution as an account executive, right? I would start by, I mean, when I first started, we were just picking up the phone and dialing anyone who would answer. But then you start to narrow down ICP, you mature, you narrow down the company insights, the recent funding, and the predictions. And you see it kind of drop off from there. So notice, folks, like this is what your peers are doing. So if you can layer in those predictive signals, it really gives you kind of that, gets you a little bit ahead of the curve.
Absolutely.
So with that, I want to turn it over to Liz and talk a little bit about some of the signals that Crunchbase offers, but also kind of why you should trust these signals. And Liz, I'll let you take it away.
Absolutely. Now, just as Nick mentioned, what makes Crunchbase uniquely positioned for signal-led outbound? And that boils down to Crunchbase's data advantage. We have a foundation that's built to surface momentum before it is obvious to the market. Just as Nick mentioned earlier, we have 20 years experience with private market data, and we've been growing our authority in predictive private market intelligence, combining verified global sources with real-time engagement signals from over 80 million Crunchbase users. Now, that is what gives us the ability to not just surface what's happened, but show the signals that lead to funding, to growth events, and ultimately change that's occurring within these private companies. And that's what powers our predictive intelligence. It helps you, when you're outbounding, reach out earlier, have better and more strategic timing before your competitors even see those opportunities. Now, that's the data foundation, and that's what makes signal-led outbound so strong and possible with Crunchbase. But the real question is, what are those signals? How do you actually use them to guide outreach? So, Nick, I would love for you to actually walk us through the signals that matter the most for outbound and how teams use them to decide when and how to engage.
Yeah, so and I saw Dave's question in the chat, and I'm going to answer that as well. But some of the signals that I think of, especially when it comes to predictions and insights, on the left-hand side, you see some of the top ones here. So number one, is this company growing? And specifically, is it growing in comparison with its peers? Some of the signals that Crunchbase offers, for example, you'll see growth scores, and that growth score is looking at dozens of underlying signals to understand how is this company growing within its market compared to other peers. And that's something I take a look at. The next one I'm actually going to skip down to is products and services. I want to understand as a sales team, is this company offering products and services that I can attach to? So if I think of like, if I'm offering a solution that helps AI providers, then I might look at Anthropic and see some of the different products that they're creating and attach to those. So I can search by that signal. Another one that was always very popular for me as an account executive were news insights. I want to understand, how popular is this company? Are they in the news? Are they making headway? Are they announcing new products or new partnerships or new services? Are investors announcing things that have to do with this company? And Crunchbase offers a unique signal called the heat score that really helps with this. Basically, it looks at how popular is this organization compared to its peers. And then the last two are R&D and competition. And I always want to think about, is this company innovating? Are they looking at new patents? Are they developing new legal proceedings? And then who is their competition? Because are they in a thriving market, or are they in a market that maybe isn't doing as well? So those are some of the things we like to see. On the predictive side, I would actually make the argument that I look at every single one of these things. Like, I want to understand, is a company growing? Are they about to raise funding? Because that means they'll have money to spend on my product. Are they about to go public? Which means they're going to put the hood up and evaluate all of their processes and solutions. Or are they maybe not doing as well? And we're looking at things like closure predictions or layoff predictions, which means maybe it's not the right time for that conversation. And then that final one of acquisition, or people looking at them to potentially acquire them. So these are some of the more powerful signals that I have. But Dave, to answer your question, I'll also send over some of the kind of fundamental signals I look for in the chat so that you can take a look at that. And I think it might make sense to kind of bring all of this together and look at it kind of firsthand. And so I know Sally has put together an incredible demo on that we can take a look at and see kind of how we use these signals. So Liz, maybe we can play that for the team.
Terrific. Sounds good. We'll go ahead and cue that up.
Thanks, Nick and Liz. Now that we've talked about why signal-based outbound matters, let me show you how that actually comes to life in Crunchbase. I'll do that by walking through a simple workflow your team can use day to day. Then I'll explore how you can take Crunchbase's external signals and surface them in your Snowflake environment using our API. So you can marry those external signals with your company's internal signals. When I log into Crunchbase, I'm usually not just looking up a company. My goal is to quickly understand where the best outbound opportunities are emerging. Here's my personalized Crunchbase homepage. This is where I can monitor all of the signals for the companies I care about in one place in real time. Right now, I only want to see what's happening with the ABM list that I'm working this quarter. So I have this saved list selected. To create a saved list, you can either import accounts into Crunchbase or build the list within the platform. Now, for this select group of companies, I can surface recent happenings like awards they've won, key employee changes, layoffs, partnership announcements, product launches. This gives me some really powerful ammunition for reaching out, but more on that in a bit. What truly makes Crunchbase special are the predictive signals we provide. So in addition to those news signals, I can also surface companies that are predicted to fundraise, get acquired, IPO, or grow in the near future. Now I can reach out to these companies before milestones happen and start to build relationships before my competitors are aware of an emerging opportunity. So from my homepage, I have always on customized awareness without manually searching. But today, I want to walk you through a core workflow. These are the steps that most reps take to discover their best outbound opportunities. I'm going to go to Scout, our natural language search companion. I can tell Scout to find me companies based on a few types of signals. First, I can leverage product-based signals. So let's say I want to see self-driving car companies in North America. This allows me to quickly find companies based on what they're building. As you can see, I have over 1,000 results. So let's use Scout to refine my search. Since I sell best into companies with over 100 employees, I'm going to tell Scout to show me that. Combining the company size and product information is huge. If I know what the company makes or the services they offer, paired with the typical company size we excel selling into, this helps me better gauge how ripe this opportunity is and that they can benefit from what my team sells. I've now whittled the list down from over 1,000 to just over 300 results, which makes this a more actionable pool to outbound to. The next type of signal I can tap into are news-based signals. For example, Series A wellness companies that have been mentioned in the news 5 or more times in the last 60 days. This signal helps me identify companies that are still relatively early in their funding journey, but they're gaining momentum in the news. I can now take these specific news mentions and craft an outbound narrative around that. Whatever your query, you always want to think about your ICP and weave in those demographics. So include funding stage, industry, employee headcount, revenue, location. These are Crunchbase's fundamental signals, so that rich firmographic and financial information. But the most unique, forward-looking outbound will come from the prediction-based signals you can also tap into. For example, agentic AI companies in North America likely to fundraise in the next 6 months. So you can start to reach out and let them know your confidence in the trajectory of their business and start building that relationship before your competitors. Again, this could be predicted to fundraise, predicted to grow, predicted to get acquired. Whatever that predictive angle is, that would make the most sense for your product or service use case. These signals, both fundamental and predictions, can influence how you determine if accounts meet your outbound engagement criteria. Having all of these signals working together create the whole picture of whether or not they're worth adding to your target list to outbound to. Do they have a steady headcount? Do they operate in a similar sector? Are they expected to raise in the next 6 months? Are they showing signs of growth? These parameters together meet my team's engagement readiness score, so they're great candidates to outbound to, and nurture in a way the competition may not have done so previously. Let's click into this search and talk about how we can refine the list even further. Again, I'm looking at agentic AI companies in North America predicted to fundraise. We have 83 results, so let's prioritize them. I can look at this Crunchbase rank. Crunchbase does the work here for you by taking a bunch of factors and telling you which companies are the hottest. Or you can continue to add filters based on signals that are important to you. I only want to see companies that have a high and medium growth score. That just cut the list down from 83 to 36. Great for outbound. You want to be the first to know about anything that's happening with any of these companies or about any new companies that cross the threshold of criteria and join the list. So I'm going to save it. Let's call it Growing North America Agentic AI Companies Likely to Fundraise. I can now turn on daily or weekly updates about anything that happens with these companies. Again, any new companies that join the list. So I'm going to save that search. Now, let's talk about how you can really make your outbound personalized and unique. As an example, I'm going to click into LangChain to gather some intel. This is their company profile. There's a lot of information here, but a few sections I want to call out specifically. The first is this predictions and insights section. As you can see, Crunchbase tells you that they're growing, but let's explore why. It looks like they've recently raised 125 million in Series B funding, valuing them at over $1 billion, making them a unicorn. I can also see that that funding aimed to expand their AI agent tooling and development platform. Wow, this now gives me some really interesting information I can reference as to why and how I know they're growing when I reach out to them. We also believe that if they do raise another round, there's a 95% chance that it's going to happen in the next 6 months. That's a really strong boost of confidence. Another great section is notable events. From here, I can see recent happenings. Let's say it's this new partnership. I can reach out and say, saw the news about your partnership. This is a great moment to amplify momentum and turn announcement buzz into pipeline. Or maybe it's this product launch. I saw your team brought deep agents to market. I see a big opportunity to accelerate traction right out of the gate. Or maybe it's a new leadership hire. Congrats on the new role. Reaching out because your leadership transition creates a window of opportunity for fresh ideas. Or it could be an award. Congrats on being recognized. When a company gets this kind of validation, it's often a perfect time to build on that credibility. Whatever the event is, you can craft a really interesting, unique, and timely message around that. That shows them you already have deep insights and an understanding of their company, building trust. Right below that are products and services. Only Crunchbase has proprietary products and services data that can help you instantly understand what a company actually offers and how it fits into the market. From here, you can assess fit, competition, and strategic alignment without manually researching. This can help you further tailor your outbound to match their offerings and use cases. So you could reach out along the lines of, saw you offer LangGraph, reaching out because we work with teams in that space to help support XYZ outcome. You can also get an in-depth look at their financials. Again, that hard to find trusted information all in one place. In this market intelligence section, you can now see competitors. That's actually built on our proprietary products and services data, giving you a clear view into which companies truly compare and compete with the one you're targeting. With this kind of information, you can uncover even more accounts you might want to target with your outbound. Then we have our news section. So you can see validated news sources and pull the articles you might want to reference in your outreach. Isn't it great that you can access this from the same place you're getting those key account details that are also informing your outbound? Not only are you validating them, but you're also getting that timely context you need to reach out in a one-of-a-kind way, all from one place. The last section I'm going to call out are these interest signals. Through our partnership with Bombora, you can also see what their employees are searching for online, which could be a great buying signal too. So with all this rich information at your fingertips, you'll know who, when, and how to target your outbound. Actionable data like what you've seen in Crunchbase's software is also accessible via the Crunchbase API. And we know data extensibility is key, as you're likely using other systems that inform your outbound motion and strategy. To give you an idea of how this might look within another tool in your tech stack, like your data warehousing platform, let's take a peek at a dashboard we've built out in Snowflake. This gives you a sense for how our data looks when integrated into Snowflake and the signals you can access in a structured table like this. And keep in mind, while this is a custom dashboard, it's only a subset of our data accessible from the API and in Snowflake. Keeping in our theme of looking at AI companies for Outbound, let's take a look at Crowdbotics. I can see those core financial and firmographic details that give me great context. Their industries, their employee headcount, earlier stage with Series B funding, that they're headquartered in California. I can also see that they're actively seeking funding with a score of 94. Paired with our time series data, I can see that they're most likely to raise in the next 6 to 12 months. This signal gives me early insight before the round is announced. This can help fuel my outbound timing and act before my competitors do. They're also very likely to grow, with layoffs being very unlikely. All of this meets the criteria of who I'm best selling into. So not only is Crowdbotics likely to raise, they're likely to grow, making them a high value target based on my ICP. That's a ton of power you can use to pinpoint the right accounts and ensure your outbound lands. Now that you've seen signals that can elevate your outbound in both Crunchbase's software and what's accessible through the API, I want to hand things back to Liz. I know seeing our predictive intelligence is one thing, but it's another to understand how trustworthy it is. Liz, I'll pass it back to you to wrap up.
Perfect. All right, guys, let me stop my share real fast. I'm really excited to show you all a quick view into how you can actually trust the predictions that both Sally had mentioned and also what as far as what Nick had been discussing as well. So, again, you saw the way that predictive signals show up in those workflows that Sally displayed. However, we always get the natural question of how much can I trust those forward-looking views? And that's where it is truly critical to understand how Crunchbase's predictions perform. And that's exactly what we're able to display to you guys with our live prediction performance dashboard. So what we're seeing here is how our predictions perform in the real world, not just in theory. So if I jump back to some of the examples that Sally had shared with us earlier, I want to take a look specifically within artificial intelligence. And let's see at the seed stage of these companies. Now, by running this query specifically to see how our funding predictions perform, I will then be able to see that out of all of these events, we have captured a significant percentage of actual funding events with 94.5% recall. That recall means that Crunchbase is identifying the majority of real opportunities before these funding events happen on AI companies that are at the seed stage. This is before it occurs, not after these events have been announced. Now, seeing this type of performance on our predictions in real time on our production data is what makes these signals so powerful for signal-led outbound. So instead of reacting to funding news when everyone else sees it, you're able to use credible signals that give you a window before that moment when priorities are forming and conversations are still open. Now, that's really the wedge here. Signals that help you strike earlier and stand out instead of competing with everyone else at the same time. Now, that's the external side of the signal-led outbound motion equation. But to really make this work at scale, it's about how those signals connect to what your team already knows. So, Nick, I'm actually going to pass things back to you to really bring this notion home from a full go-to-market perspective.
Yeah, I mean, I think that, to bring this all together, there is no one specific signal that's going to match every company's solution out there, right? It's really dependent on the solution that you're selling, who you're selling it to, what market or industry you're in. So my recommendation is you need a combination of all three of these things. You need to pair those internal signals with the private market data, with the predictions and insights, and you start to kind of toggle and play around with well, which of these are getting me the best results? And one thing that I would mention, and obviously I'm biased because I enable our sales team, but I would highly recommend you speak to a member of our sales team about this, because what they're going to do is bring in their expertise of working with companies in your industry, in your function, and they'll be able to tell you the specific signals that have worked better in their experience. And so, and ultimately pair that with how Crunchbase could potentially help you. So my recommendation would be, like, if you're even remotely curious and you want to talk to a member of the team about those signals, we can get way more personalized and tailored. So I know that Liz is launching our final poll now on how best we can follow up with you, whether or not you want to explore kind of Crunchbase API and Snowflake, the software, how this could potentially work for your specific outbound workflow, or if you're just here to learn, that's fine too. But Liz, I think that's the real power, is the combination of signals and not just one.
I would absolutely agree. And I know that we covered a lot in a short period of time. We told you this would be under 30 minutes, and we are just over, but we had so many great nuggets that we wanted to share that could potentially unlock your next stage of really strategic outbound, leveraging the unique signals that only Crunchbase can provide. So, really appreciate your thoughtful questions, your attentiveness throughout. We'll leave the poll up as we end our webinar and our time together today. But just as Nick mentioned, if you want to have another conversation, our team is more than happy to reach out. We'd love to go in depth with your use case, and we will look forward to the next session that we have for our Ahead series. But with that, that's all for us. I hope you all have a wonderful rest of your Wednesday. Be good, and we'll see you next time. Take care.